What you're about to see is my interpretation of life and times and the events after the rapture during the first 3 months of the tribulation.
Well, the dream continued.
It's good to be back in this small town where things are relatively normal, at least on this side of town.
This is day 2. Oh, it was amazing at the same time. It was scary. Anyway, what happened? I saw those 7 blocks again, and it was 7 blocks. And the first one was painted, and that was all the soldiers gathering at the Valley of Armageddon. And then the second one I saw painted, and the picture it drew was of the universe. Again, I could see the stars, and I could see that line with a big star in the middle. And then the wall lowered again, or I flew over the wall, however that happens. And then I wasn't one of the soldiers in the second dream. I was kind of hovering over everything. I could see the soldiers below, and this time I could move, I could look around. But I didn't see the angel, but I could sense that he was still there.
But I'm just glad to be back in this small town. Because I've seen things today, this morning, just not more than 4 hours ago. I've seen things that nobody should ever see. And it's just like the Bible said. In the last days, the times would be so terrible, so horrible, so awful. They would be the worst time in human history. And thankfully, never to be equaled again.
And anyway, I was watching that cross-section, that dissection in the universe of the stars and everything. And it was really weird because it was like the blackness of the universe, like the dark matter of the universe was just a wall, was just cloth, because it was starting to roll up. You know, like you roll up a newspaper, or you roll up a piece of paper, or you roll up a carpet. That's what was happening from the point of light. You could see it rolling up this way and rolling up that way. Then I watched the blackness roll up, and it just, it was kind of cool. The blackness of the universe disappeared. All the stars stayed in place, but all the dark matter vanished, and there was just that bright white light from where everything started, from that pinpoint.
I thought the big cities would be a little more organized. I thought they would be just like this small town here. Relatively normal. But it's even worse. It's worse in the big cities. just awful. I had to get out of the house for a while, just to let it sink in, hoping some of the sights and images would leave my head. And then I could see this kind of rainbow kind of cube. It was like a cube, that perfectly square, but it had 12 slots in it, 3 on each wall, and each of them were a different color, all kinds of colors. It seemed like they were made with some kind of precious stone and stuff like that, but I didn't really understand it at first. And I asked out loud, what is that? Because it was so beautiful, it was so amazing. It glowed, and it just sort of hovered there, where everything started, where that pinpoint of light was. And then I could hear the angel say, that is the heavenly city. And then the Holy Spirit must have flashed my mind to that part in the book of Revelation that describes the heavenly city being, 1,400 miles wide by 1,400 miles deep by 1,400 miles high. It made that cube, and each of the walls were made of precious stones, and okay. It started off about 5 o'clock this morning. My neighbors and I, we've been trading food, and yesterday he asked me to drive into the big city with him. He said he's got some relatives coming in who had just went hunting, and they got a moose. So they said they were going to butcher it up and share the meat. And he figured he'd give us some, since we gave him some water and some other supplies the first week after the rapture, so he was just paying us back. At first I was a little suspicious, driving into town with some strangers, but the Spirit said not to worry. The Holy Spirit said not to worry about it. So we left just before sunset, and it took 2 or 3 hours to get into town. And just as we're approaching the city, within a couple miles, that's when it hit. Literally, the smell of death. And I don't know if you've ever smelled burnt flesh, or burnt hair, or rotting meat, but that's what the entire city smelled like. And the stench hit you a couple miles out of town, and it was even worse in town. The big cities, I thought they'd be more organized, like I said, but they're not. There's a lot of mill cops roaming around, and you see the occasional Nephilim, but the military police were not there to keep order. It was kind of neat because that city itself, being 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 14 yada yada, it could easily fit in the middle of North America. It would go from the middle of Canada all the way down to the tip of Florida, from Los Angeles to Florida up to Vancouver to Toronto. It could fit in there, and that's just one city. That's just God's holy city. But I could see it hovering there at the end of the universe, basically, because you could still see the stars there. You could still see all the celestial bodies in the universe, but the universe looked totally different because there was no blackness, and you could see just how big heaven was compared to the universe. They're not there to keep things organized. It seems like they're there just to kill off somebody every now and then for whatever reason. somebody would get shot. You go in the city and every once in a while you hear gunshots, and you just know that somebody had just died. Uh,
and then the dream started to fade from there. And then my point of view, it shifted from the earth to being out in space. So from there I could see the earth on one end, and I could see the heavenly city on the other end. Because the heavenly city, heaven itself, sits on the edge of the universe. There's a point where the stars end, and that's where heaven begins. And it was and then all of a sudden, from the heavenly city, I could see this light, this shaft of light, shoot across the universe and end or stop at the atmosphere of Earth. It stopped hovering right above the atmosphere and was pointing down towards Israel. And the shaft of light, it wasn't just a shaft of light, it was it seemed like a road made of light, because it was about 10 miles wide, this road, and it was about half a mile thick.
We drove through downtown, and it is far worse. Every once in a while, on the other side of town, here in this small town of Kingston, we saw the occasional dead body. Every other city block or every other block in this town, there would be a dead body here and there. But you get into the big cities, you get into downtown, and people are walking on the roads. There's very few cars. My neighbors' relatives were lucky to have a car with gas. But driving downtown, like I was saying, the streets are mainly walking with, mainly have people walking on them, because the sidewalks are just filled with dead bodies. They're just piles of dead bodies. It's incredible. It's just, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. There must be so much violence there at night, because in the daytime they just pile up the bodies.
And then from there, my point of view moved to moving over top the road to the point where the universe ends and heaven begins. And on the landscape of heaven, it's an amazing landscape, because they have everything that Earth has, except it has a golden, eternal quality to it, a crystal quality to it. There's trees, there's animals, there's mountains, there's rivers, but it's so much more beautiful than what it is on Earth. On Earth, all that stuff looks really bland in comparison to what it is in heaven. And then in the fields of heaven, I could see this ocean of movement. And then I could see a bright light that was at the head of it. And then I moved in closer. I moved in closer to this bright light, and it turned out to be what I'm assuming, or at this point, I'm assuming it's the Lord, because there was this bright white figure with a robe and a long flowing beard, long flowing hair, and it was sitting on a horse. And this horse was a big horse. And I would imagine from foot to the tip of the ears, it's about 12 feet tall, 15 feet tall, something like that. It's a big horse, and I'm assuming it's the Lord, because my mind flashed to the book of Revelation that said he would have a glow and his eyes would be like fire, and that was the thing. You couldn't see any detail in his face, because it glowed with a light, but you could still see that he had hair and cheekbones and mouth and stuff like that. You still knew that was there, but you couldn't really see it. But the eyes itself, the eyes were like orange and red and yellow, like actual fire.
It's awful. It's just there's no words to describe it. The smell of burning and rotting flesh. It's a sickening sweet smell. And every once in a while there would be a pile of burning flesh. That's where it was coming from. But most of it are just dead bodies just piled up. But that's not the worst of it. The worst thing was the cannibals.
And then he kind of straightened himself out, and then he turned back to say something. And then it was then that I realized that that ocean of movement were actually millions and millions of angels and celestial beings and people in their robes and stuff like that. And then that's when, in my dream, I pulled back really far, and I ended up back on the earth. And that's where the dream ended. So that's kind of neat. The first two days, I'm assuming that, and I'm hoping and I'm praying that the Lord will continue the dream tomorrow, which would be day 3, and that's probably when the battle's going to happen. So yesterday I saw the armies of the one-worlders forming in the Valley of Armageddon. And then today I saw the armies of heaven getting ready to march down to the earth. So whoever you are, whoever finds this, just call upon the name of the Lord Jesus, and you'll be saved. From what I've seen, his power is magnificent. It's the power of heaven, the position of heaven, the placement of heaven. It makes the universe that we know seem so small in comparison. But we'll see how the dream continues tomorrow. Okay, thanks for listening. Jesus rules.
I had projected, in my mind, I figured that yes, the cannibalism would happen, but I figured it would happen about a year into the tribulation. Because I know in this small town, it'll probably be abandoned. We hear rumors that they're kicking everyone out of town and moving everyone to the capital in one of the 10 regions. We hear again they're starting to divide North America up into 10 parts, and each of those 10 parts has a major city, and those major cities are where all the population are going to be centralized. Everybody in the small towns and villages are going to be kicked out and moved into the city, at least those that aren't killed or those that aren't put into camps. The obedient to the New World Order will be moved to the large city populations. So I figured all the dissidents, the people who want to stay away from the New World Order, and who aren't kicked out of town, once this town is abandoned, I figured, within the year, they would have totally looted all the houses, taken as much food as they could get from it. And then after that would be the alley cats and stray dogs. That would be the next source of food on the New World Order food chain. And then after that, the squirrels, the birds, they would all be gone. But once all the wildlife and all the animal life had been eaten, I figured then, at about the year mark, that's when people would start turning on each other and eating each other for food. But not so in the big cities. Cannibalism has started, and by the looks of it, it's not even being done for food. It's not even being done to survive. the time that we drove through downtown, it took about 10 minutes to drive through downtown. And there's about 30, 40 blocks. And every 2 or 3 blocks, you'd see somebody just casually walking around, eating a body part, carrying a leg, carrying an arm. And these people, they weren't zombies. I would imagine that it was those people who turned cannibals were the ones who accepted the number. And from what I hear, when you accept the number of the beast, you get a demon. You get opened up to an evil spirit, a fallen angel, a demon, so that you become demon possessed. And I would imagine that it is those people, the demon possessed people, that are the ones just eating other people for sport. They're not eating it for food, for necessity to survive. These demons are just eating people because they can. It's just... I just had to get out of there. As soon as we got back into the town here, we got the supplies unloaded, and I just left. I didn't want to be around anybody. Everything that I see, the cannibalism is just, it started early, and the demons are doing it for sport. But eventually it's also going to be done out of necessity too. I don't know. That's all I can say. You who are watching this, you who find this little recording device, since you'll be finding it in a small town and you're on the outskirts, don't go into the big cities. Because eventually you'll be eating. You'll be eaten. I don't know what you're eating now. I don't know how long after the town has been abandoned that you find this, but I would imagine this is where the prophetic image of the zombies come from. Is the people on the outside of the New World Order, on the outside of the capital cities, of the 10 regions. Once the food runs out, they're going to become starving, they're going to become hungry, they're going to become skin and bones, they're basically going to become walking skeletons, walking in a daze, looking for something to eat. And if the only food supply is a person, then I would imagine people are going to be eating people out of necessity. Just stay away from the big cities, because the demon-possessed people are eating other people for sport. I just had to get that out. Whoever you are that finds this, I pray that you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, because that's the only way you can get out of this living hell that this New World Order has created. It's the only way you can get into heaven. Allow yourself to be thrown into captivity and beheaded. May Jesus have mercy on your soul, because nobody else in this New World Order will have mercy on you any way, shape, or form. That's it. That's it. Call on Jesus. Wow. I just woke up about half an hour ago or so, and this was one of the most exciting dreams that I've ever had. I think this is day 3 of the dream, because I saw the third block being painted, and it was that view that we left off with
yesterday. The view that shows the earth, and it shows heaven and the universe in between. And yes, that was the Lord on the horse. But the battle hadn't started yet. What this dream was about was showing me the vast amount of armies that are at his disposal, the heavenly armies, the angelic armies, the regenerated armies. Because the whole thing started off with his horse. I was actually on the road and I was walking up to him. It was almost like I was invisible because he couldn't see me. He didn't react to me, and I couldn't touch anything. But I was able to walk by the horse and look up, and I could see that it was Jesus, and I could see almost invisibly through his robe. I could see on his thigh those words, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But it didn't look like a tattoo. It looked kind of like invisible writing, because I could see that he had skin. He had glorified skin. He had human skin that had a different glow than regular human skin, because his body had been resurrected, regenerated. But the writing was kind of glass-like. You could almost see into it. You could almost see through it because it had a shimmering effect that looked different than his regular skin. But you could easily see the words, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And I just noticed that out of the corner of my eye as I was walking by. And then my body lifted up again, and I could see the vast amount of people. It was almost like I was flying over them slowly, so I could get a look at the different kind of armies there are. And the first one were angels, and they had on armor and breastplate, and they were about most of them were about 6 or 7 feet tall. Some were a little bit taller. They had on this really cool armor, and some of them had wings, and some of them didn't have wings. Some of them had swords, and the swords themselves. There was 3 different kinds of swords. There was a kind of sword that had that was regular metal looking, but they had a gold tinge or a silver tinge to them. And they resembled earthly metal, but they had kind of a transparent look to them. And then the other kind of sword were a flaming sword, swords that were made out of actual fire, and they didn't burn just like regular fire, like earthly fire. It had a different quality that sort of spread out as it went up. And then the other kind of sword looked like frozen lightning bolts, like a lightning bolt had shot up, and then it was sort of stuck in one place, but you could still see it pulsating, and you could still see all the power emanating from it. And then some of the soldiers or some of the angels there, they also had bows and arrows, and again it was the same thing. The bows were made out of something that looked like earthly metal, but it wasn't. It had a silver tinge and a gold tinge to it, and it was transparent again, like the swords. And in the quivers, they had the same 3 kind of arrows that were made out of the same kind of material that the swords were made out of. There were some arrows that looked like lightning, and there were some arrows that looked like fire, and then there were some arrows that just had that regular metallic look to them. And some of those angels had spears. Again, the same thing with the spears. Some look like lightning, some look like fire, and some look just like earthly metal with a heavenly quality to them. And then behind that group of angels, or those groups of angels, there were angels that were on horses. These angels were a little bit taller, and these horses were about the same size as the Lord's horses. So they're about 12, 15 feet high, big horses, and big angels on them. And there was a group of horses that were all white, and there was a group of horses that were all black, and they had colors that looked like marble patterns, or like Rocky Mountain patterns, or the patterns that you see in an ocean, kind of an ocean kind of color, or patterns that were looking like fall leaves in a forest. You see all these different colors in the forest. Some were patterned like that. Some were patterned like rock and stuff like that. And so were the angels. There were groups of angels that didn't have regular one-tone skin. They had multi-tone skin. And then there's another group of horses and angels behind them. Except these horses, they had wings. Some of them had wings that were the same colors as the horses themselves, but they were huge wings. You know, there were white horses, there were black horses, there were fiery red horses and marble-colored horses. And then there was another group of horses that had double wings, and that was so cool. I'd never seen anything like that too. When they stretched out, their wing patterns were just kind of, I don't know. It was just, I can see why that the Lord is showing me this one day at a time, because so far there's no way I could have taken in all this information all at the same time. And anyway, behind those angels, there was a final group of angels, and these angels, they're about 30 feet tall. Some a little bit taller, some a little bit shorter, but they averaged about 30 feet tall. But they didn't have on armor or anything. They just had like a loincloth, and on their feet, they looked like they had bare feet. But when they were walking, they kind of sparked when they made a step, and when they sparked, you could see that the kind of sandals that they were wearing were invisible. They were made out of some kind of invisible material, and you could even see the straps too. The straps would reflect the light in a different way. So if you weren't paying attention, you'd swear they were in bare feet. But if you looked closely, you could see that they had kind of invisible kind of sandals on them. But these angels were really strong and opposing. Some had long hair, some had short hair. Again, some were one-tone skin, and some of them were multi-tone skin. But these guys were big and opposing, or imposing. And they had, and they only had a spear. That's all they had. And it wasn't made out of the same material as the rest. It looked like they took a pine tree and just stripped all the leaves off of it, or stripped all the leaves and branches off of it, and just formed it with their hands into a spear. And the spearhead looked like it had, it was made out of some kind of metal that was different than all the rest of the metal there. And then behind those angels, I could see people. I can only call them people because they look exactly like those raptured people. They had heavenly robes. There were some tall people, some short people. You could tell some people were black, were red, were white, were yellow, were olive-toned skinned. They were the regenerated people. They were the redeemed people. And some of them were walking, and some of them had weapons as well. Some of them had one of the three kinds of swords. Some of them had a spear, or some of them had bows and arrows too. And some were in chariots pulled by these horses that could, these horses had breastplates on them, you know, really strong looking metallic breastplate. And when they snorted, it looked like ambers coming through. It looked like fire coming through, but not flames of fire, but you could tell that it seemed like their insides were made out of fire. So when they snorted, these bright burning ambers burned through. And when they stepped, every time they stepped on the road, they made kind of sparks all over the place, because these things were heavy. And then their footprints that they left were like balls of fire. There was a horseshoe
kind of shape, but there was flames coming out of it. So as they moved by, they left a trail of fire. And it was not the kind of fire that would burn anything that was in heaven. Not that kind of material. And again, the wheels on the chariots too, they also sparked, and they left flames, trails of fire. And then there was another group of people. Basically, they were the redeemed people, but these ones could fly. They were floating above the road. So there are two groups of people. One group of people that could walk, and one group of people that could fly. And they were all dressed for battle as well. And then the final group behind them were just regular regenerated people. They couldn't fly. They didn't have any weapons, but they had instruments. They were the ones playing this music. Some had harps, some had stringed instruments, and most were just singing. Some had tambourines, and the song they were playing, it's just so beautiful. I'd never heard anything like it. I wish I could reproduce it, but I'm sure we'll hear it when we get to heaven. And anyway, again, my body pulled back away from the road, and I could see the city of heaven there with the edge of the universe. I could see the light road going all the way down to the earth too. And the walk from heaven to earth across the universe, it only took maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes. With modern day technology, it would take thousands and thousands of years to cross millions and millions of light years of time and space to get from Earth to the end of the universe. But when you come from heaven and you're made of heavenly substance and you're not bound by the time-space universe that we are, you can traverse the entire expanse of the universe in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it took. It just seemed like everybody was kind of preparing themselves and psyching themselves up, because everybody was both had a mixture of being elated because they just came from heaven, they just came from the presence of love, but at the same time they knew that they were going into battle with people, with those who had chosen the number of the beast, with those who had chosen to follow the ways of Lucifer, with those who became part of the one world system. They knew that they were about to battle the most evil, wicked people of mankind. Everybody that was left behind that accepted the number of the beast, those who weren't martyred and went to heaven. They knew they were in the battle. And anyway, they finally got to the end of the light road. I could see everyone standing there. I could see Earth far below. I could see the curvature of the Earth. And they were, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 miles above the Earth when the Lord signaled to stop. And you could see the area of Israel below there. So you knew within a matter of minutes they were about to leave the light road of heaven and make their way down to the valley of Armageddon. And that's when the dream ended on that one. So it was kind of scary, but it was kind of exciting too. I'd imagine the next dream, the fourth dream, is when the battle's going to happen. So if it does, I'll post another video. I'll make another video. So whoever you are that finds this, just call on the name of the Lord Jesus, and you'll get to experience all the beauty of heaven as well. And you'll get to live on the new earth. Because right now, I'm at the beginning of the 7 years of tribulation. Just a couple of months into it, couple of weeks into it. I'm not sure exactly when. But we haven't even got to the end of the 7 years of tribulation yet.
So the battle that I've been dreaming of is yet to come. So if you find this before the end of the 7 years, you're going to see heaven's armies descend down to this earth. So call upon the name of the Lord Jesus and you'll be saved.